Exactly. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Lecture 23 of CSE 532373 Mobile Sensing and Learning and Control. All right, I have had enough coffee today. This is good. So we're moving on. It also helped to, I guess, have a long weekend, even though I was here Friday. Welcome to Lecture 23. Today we're going to talk about mobile HCI. This is the first of our kind of bonus lecture topics that we're going to be talking about. There are only, after this lecture, there are 2 more lectures in the class. And also, have you guys seen this? I don't know if you guys have had this in other courses or whatever, if they've made an announcement. But John Carmack is going to be here on Friday. He's going to be giving a talk. He is a co-founder of ID Software. He built the graphic engines that power Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Quake. That was what he did before. Now he is the CTO of Oculus VR. Do you guys know who Oculus is? They just got bought by Facebook for how many billions of dollars? 6 billion? $100 billion. It's like 2. But it's, anyway. Friday, he'll be here in the auditorium from 4 to 5:30, Investor Hughes. Get there early. It's probably going to be standing room only, okay? But this would be a wonderful thing to go look at. I think it's going to be a great talk. Fair enough? Okay. So anyway, I did want to mention that. Course logistics. A6 grades are coming. I think as of a few hours ago, I've got everybody's A6 turned in. Let me know if that's not the case. If you turned in your proposal over the weekend, I most likely gave you feedback about it already. If you haven't turned in your proposal, please turn it in today so that I can get you feedback on the project proposal requirements and constraints and make sure that everything's set to go. Next week, there is no class. The reason that there is no class is because I'm at a conference, the Human-Computer Interaction Conference is what happened. So I will be gone all week. I should actually be back on Wednesday. So next Wednesday we can still have lab session, but essentially what we're going to be doing is we'll have lab session and I can answer questions about final projects if you're here. If no one's here, I'm leaving. I'll go to my office, essentially, okay? If you guys are here, you ask questions, I'll just work in here and answer questions if I can, okay? Okay, sounds good. So let's look at the requirements for the final project. The final project during the exam time, there's going to be each team is going to go through and demonstrate their finished application to me. Yes?
What is that exam time?
What is that exam time? I'm fairly certain I put it on the website. I did not commit it to memory. So let's find that out. This is actually important. I believe it's May 7th. May 7th. It's a Thursday. Wednesday. That's what I said. Wednesday at 3 in the afternoon. Okay. Wednesday at 3 in the afternoon. So that demonstration, essentially I am going to go from group to group. You have 10 minutes. You are going to give me a pitch on the app. And you're going to show each of the elements that you were constrained to meet, right, on the application. Everybody's going to have to answer at least one question, but you get to choose who answers what question. The questions will come from me. I'm basically going to go around the clipboard and kind of evaluate how well you pitch the app and kind of the function and the form so that I really get an idea of how to play around with the app that you built, right? So anything that you want to show, anything that you can demonstrate to me during that demo time, try and demonstrate it, right? So if your app was going to do X, Y, and Z, and you can show me X and Y on demonstration day, that goes a long way, right? Like a live demo, if you can show me it working, right? That goes a really long way, right? Other than that, I'm going to be looking at your project, the web page that you turn in, which basically has a video of your pitch on what the app is supposed to be. This is going to be a little more technical than what you would find on Kickstarter, right? Because I want to know what you did, right? So yeah, it's got the design elements. You have kind of a marketing style ploy to, you're trying to sell your application and paint it in that kind of business-oriented, user-centric form. But I also want to know how you did it. I want to know some of the specifics so that there's some grading criteria there. So be sure to include some of the technical aspects that you wouldn't normally include on something like Kickstarter. Although lots of people do include technical aspects on Kickstarter because they're trying to get funding and they want to show they have credibility. Questions on that? Yes?
Are we allowed to use only one orientation of the phone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Good. Okay, so the agenda for today is to talk about nothing but mobile HCI. That means we're going to talk about things like design, navigation, interaction, things that are, for the most part, entirely subjective, right? So I'm going to give you a bunch of hard and fast rules for mobile HCI, and then we're going to break them in different design elements, right? Because you break these rules when it makes sense, and that's because it's design. Okay? A lot of these come from the courtesy of Apple, their human interface guidelines, and from some others. So a really great resource is Apple's Human Interface Guidelines, the HIG. It's a 227-page document of how human interactions should be performed on Apple devices, right? And for their 227 pages, it leaves a lot of room for you as a designer. They simply are talking about a lot of the kind of bad design elements and how you can design around them and how you should actually come and look at an application and how it's going to be designed such that it flows with the iOS 7 design critiques. They're flat design elements. Okay? So let's get started. Wow, man, this is like, I'm gonna push myself over here. There we go. All right, what makes a great user interface? You guys tell me. What makes a great user interface? Easy to figure out. Responsive. What does that mean? Not blocking. Absolutely. It's always moving. You can always tell what it's doing.
Intuitive?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the number one goal, is have it to be intuitive, right? Pleasing to the eyeballs. Yes. I would say that is absolutely true. No matter what I tell you, let me reiterate this. There's nothing that's a hard and fast rule. Nothing, especially in HCI design. But there are 3 overarching principles that if you break these, yeah, you have a bad design. That's keep it simple and keep it clear. That includes intuitiveness and responsiveness. Kill clutter. All right? Only display what is needed on the application. What do I mean by that? Well, you have limited screen real estate, right? So that means you can only display 2 or 3 elements that you want your user to consume at a time. Okay, anything more than that and you're cluttering the screen. You're not using negative space properly, right? And we'll go through some examples. Use motion to orient the user. That means use animation to orient the user, okay? So let's take these 3 design principles and redesign this slide, right? Right now, this is a slide. And it's black and white for the most part. And it's got something that's cut off down at the very, very bottom. Okay? So how might we redesign this to get the point across of these keep it simple, kill the clutter, use motion? They could all blink, right? And they could come at you. That means that is an interface that is right in your face. All right? Something that's blinking. Okay? That is bad HCI. Why is that bad HCI? No. Give me a real reason. What? No. I mean, that's a very peripheral reason, right? You can't. What did you say? I can't. It's not readable? Is that what you said?
You can't read blinking text easily.
You can't read blinking text easily. One of the other things is blinking text tries to grab your attention. What if you don't want the user's attention to be always on that text? All of the elements in your design should be in the periphery. It should be very easy for the user to take something in the periphery and pull it into their attention and then slide it back out as quickly as possible. Blinking text screams at you, right? So you have to design peripheral interfaces where it's very easy for a user to take that, put it in their attention field, and then take it right back out when they need to. All right? So So a better slide might look like this. Deference, clarity, and depth. Deference means never compete with content, avoid the clutter. Clarity means have legible text. Keep all adornments very, very subtle in your design, right? It's not that you can't have things that are visually pleasing, but keep it subtle. You don't want it to compete with the rest of the interface. All right? Depth. Layers are visual motion cues. The layers of your application are what orient the user where they are in your app's hierarchy, where they are in the storyboard, right? Motion in any other place could be distracting from the content, right? Now again, there's no hard and fast rules, so anything I give you here is opinion, okay? So you essentially want to avoid motion in the elements of your user interface, but really use motion when you are translating and transitioning between different views, right? Because that helps you orient. If you're sliding across, that helps you orient that a new view has come on top of the stack, all right? And we'll go through some more advantages and examples. Okay, planning. The first thing you want to do, step one, is look at the core function of what your application is going to do. Okay, this is step one. So if I was going to design this slide, and I were to look at this and I would say, hey, here's step one, look at core function. This is a block which I wanted to put up, and that block is to tell you that there's more than one step, and that I want you to strip everything away from your app and look at core function. I have decided to put this in a block, right? A rounded corners block that says step one and look at core function. Is there a better way to do this? Bullet point one, look at core function. Maybe strip out some of the design elements here.
Well, if it's step one, you just do one parentheses. If it's a series of steps, you don't even need a box.
What if, I mean, why do I need this box at all, right? Wouldn't it be better to just use typography of the text to tell what is a header and then what is the point that I'm trying to get across? What if I had something like this down at the bottom? That seems completely fine. I've stripped everything out except for the core function of what this block should be. Maybe I want to use motion. Maybe I should do something like this, where I actually have step one come in, look at core function. Is that attention grabbing? Does that work in a slide? Sure, it's not bad. And then there's a very, very thin border that comes around it, right? And that's okay to have because that helps you orient people. Some buttons need borders, some don't. Okay, step two, add design elements sparsely. So we stripped everything down and then we decided, well, maybe that border is going to be okay as long as it's not distracting. I'm going to take it from 2 pixels down to 1 pixel. Step three, examine assumptions and question every single element that you have, right? If you look at the elements and you ask yourself, why do I have this? Do I really need this? And you can't come up with a really good way other than, man, but it looks cool, you should probably strip it out of the design. You know what I mean? And there's cases when you want to break that rule. We'll talk about it. Okay, so let's go through one of the examples that Apple loves to give. This is their flagship example, how to go from inception of idea to creating an app that has a defined user audience, right? So this is about saying what features does my application need to have, what's the audience for my app, and how do I gauge those features and take them down such that I'm only using them for my target audience. So let's take a recipe app, right? Some of the things that you might want to have if you're creating an app which displays recipes. What might you have?
A list of the recipes.
A list of the recipes. So it needs to create lists, right? You need to be able to create lists. What's some of the other things you do while you're cooking that you would need a recipes for? Timers? That's not I don't even know if I have that up here. So creating lists, I've got getting recipes. This is from Apple, by the way. So actually going like out onto the web, pulling recipes in. Images would be good to have. What about prices? Comparing prices. Mm-hmm. Right, right. When you're trying to plan out a meal, maybe you want to compare the different prices. You want to locate stores where you can get things to eat. Annotating recipes. When you grab something from the web and you're like, but I did this. I used a substitute here, and this was much, much better. Right? Or I added sour cream, I added bacon, and it was better. Right? Yes. Someone's nodding. Just like, yes, German food. Yes. Sour cream and bacon. Getting and using coupons. Coupons? Anybody?
Isn't that like going to the side of the core function? I mean, if it's a recipe app, like...
Oh, no. This is the brainstorming phase. This is phase 1. Every feature that we might want in the app, we're going to put it down.
Okay, yeah, 'cause that would...
What's that?
That would be great for monetization as well.
Getting and using coupons, right? Because now all of a sudden you've got advertisements that you can add in. View cooking demos. YouTube's got a lot of these videos where you can actually go in and see all these people working with stuff. Exploring different cuisines, right? Maybe you want to make things that you've never done before. So maybe that's a feature you want in your app. Finding ingredient substitutions. Does anybody cook here? You guys cook? Yeah, now we're talking, right? How many times have you had to find a substitute for something? It's like one. Okay, you don't really cook. What? Butter and milk?
Buttermilk.
Buttermilk. Buttermilk is the most common one. I've always, when I run out of eggs, I've had to substitute when you don't have eggs. Equal parts baking soda and vinegar is an egg substitute. Yeah, no kidding. And it works. For baking, it works. Anyway. No, it doesn't taste the same, but it's not, it still gets, like the egg is supposed to like firm up and do a bunch of things in baking, and the exact same thing will happen if you mix the vinegar and the substitute, the baking soda together, right? So you might not get that good taste, but it's like an egg white. If you were to use egg whites, it probably tastes the same. Okay, now we've
Nothing about health?
There was nothing about health in there, right? Maybe I should have actually manipulated. This is Apple's list. All right, so planning the app. The second thing you want to do is determine your users and list out who your users are. So who might be the users of this recipe app? Chefs? Those that cook at home or use ready-made meals?
Say it.
What?
Middle-aged women. Is this like a this or that kind of
It could be. It could be. Well, you guys tell me if you agree with them. Their audience might be people that are committed coupon users, or it might be even people that don't think coupons are worth the effort. How many guys have used a coupon in the last week? Oh, yes, yeah, that Groupon. Does the Groupon still exist? They still got that going on, right? All right. Enjoy hunting or specialty ingredients or seldom venture beyond the basics. All right? People that are looking to explore more with their cooking. Follow recipes strictly or use recipes as inspiration, right? You might want to have both of those users. People that buy small amounts frequently or buy in bulk infrequently, right? What do you think? This is probably for small amounts.
They're like not really good choices.
These aren't?
I would change the way
That they're actually putting their user groups together?
Yeah. I mean, enjoy hunting for literally. That's not. I mean, that's not the way I would like say. Oh, this app is for them. It's for hunters.
Okay. That's fair. Let's just go through this. Okay, so let's say you go through and you put together who your target users might be, right? This is a simple list of all of the target users that you can imagine might be even remotely interested in this. The next thing you want to do is narrow this down, right? So what do your users want? How do you make a target audience, right? This could be an audience. Any of these could be an audience for your application, right? You want to target those that you think you can have the most sway with and make the most money from. Why?
Because that's what you're going to do.
Because that's possibly one of the reasons you're making the app, right? I bring up money because that's the number one reason. It might not be why you're making the app. Whatever reason you're making the app for, you want to make sure that you design for those purposes, right? So the target audience for this that they come up with is people that love to experiment with recipes, are often in a hurry, and are thrifty if it doesn't take too much effort. That seems completely reasonable to me, that's what they came up with. So now that we have that audience that they love to experiment, don't take too many risks, thrifty, we want to filter all of those potential features that we came up with through this audio. So what they came up with is they looked at all of the things that they had on the list, filtered it through that audience, and what do you think they came up with? If you had to choose 3 of these bullet points for the major features. What's that?
Getting recipes.
Getting recipes.
Viewing cooking demos.
Viewing cooking demos. Ingredient substitution. This is what they came up with. Oh. They came up with creating lists, getting recipes, and getting and using coupons. For people that you can display these coupons to them as they're making their shopping list and potentially monetize part of the app.
Oh, so it's like you get the recipe and then you can buy everything for the recipe.
It's like it's meal planning, right?
It's like,
You go through and you do meal planning. It's like, oh, okay, I need this, this, and this, and they can select different coupons and things that you might actually want to go use. So it's not a bad idea, but it kind of takes you through that planning process for planning the application. This is how you streamline your features and users together. Okay, so that's planning the application. We're still going to do some more planning, but I want to talk about principles of great design before we do that. The first principle of great design is make it obvious. What is wrong with this picture? Push and pull handles use the same. By themselves, these are great elements. When installed by someone, if used improperly, they're ambiguous. They tell you something which isn't there, which is why you have people that are sitting there pulling on these handles when they need to push them in. Right? That's just bad design. What would be a better design?
What's the horizontal bar that you can push?
The horizontal bar. This is a good one. I like this one too. The whole locking mechanism. Right? Can you guys see that? You just want to kick it? Excellent. I just want to kick it too. All right. What?
Like, is that a photo you took yourself?
No, it's not a photo I took myself. I got it from the interwebs. You guys are fun.
And even if you don't have the looks, it looks exactly like a door in my high school.
Really? So all of the design, one of the things that you can say as you go through all of the doors here at SMU, all of them are designed properly. They either have a flat kind of front on them, so you push through them, or there's a pull handle when they need to be.
You haven't exited the doors that are like on the side of the basement, and they have long handles for the push.
Oh,
Short ones for the pull.
that's poor design. That's poor design. But it might look good.
It is nice.
It might look good against a very glass exterior, but it's probably poor design. The second principle of great design, text entry sucks. And it does. Right? Avoid text input at all cost. Right? So an example, let's say you're writing an application and you need someone to enter their state, the information of their state. How might you do it? One option is text. Enter state, and then you can select it and do this. Right? You're looking at me like, yeah, okay, but you wouldn't want to do that. But I don't know how many times I've seen this, where if you want to enter Texas, you need to enter TX right there. What's another way? What's the most common way of this happening?
Like,
Yeah, a little spinner, right? Select your state, right? And if you live in Alabama, that's great because you're the first one on the list, right? If you live in Wyoming, not so much. Well, maybe it's okay. It's probably okay because then you can just let it spin all the way down to the bottom. It's when you live right in the middle, right? And you need to spin just a little bit. Oh, I missed my state. I'm trying to scroll back to it. What's a better way of doing this?
The drop-down bar where you type in one letter and it goes.
infer the state from the location.
Infer the state from the location. But what if I'm entering my address and I'm not in the state where I live?
Well, just infer it from the address.
There's a lot of answers coming at the same time, and I didn't get any of them.
Infer it from the zip code.
Infer it from the zip code.
The address.
Yeah, autofill. You click the little button, it says, hey, can I access your contacts? I would like to figure out what state you're from. And not only does it do that, but it enters the rest of the address, credit card information, anything that it knows about you.
And then you get
This seems like a terrible idea.
But not if you're entering your address, usually. Yes?
I think you shouldn't even press the button autofill. Like if you just see that your information is in the spaces where it should be, you can just click next. You know? Because clicking autofill, sometimes you feel it's gonna make mistakes.
Yes, but we'll get to that. One of the things that, as you're building an application, you don't get access to their contacts. You have to ask someone for access to their contacts. And where you do that is very, very important because it determines if you're going to be able to get access or not. Okay? And we'll talk about that. Layout with care, right? So visually, when people look at a page, when they look at their phone, the most important part is the top left, right? That is where the eye is drawn to naturally right off the bat. Everything else is less important as you go down to the bottom right. Okay? So, this is not very much space when you're on a phone. When you're on a web page, this is this is a very important design element when you're on a web page.
Is that because of the way we read?
It is because of the way we read, and it is culturally specific.
Yeah, because they right to left hand.
Yes.
So if you watch like a horror movie made in a country that's right to left, it's not as scary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they like have things pop out on the left side because it's where they don't expect things to come from, and we expect it from there.
That's true. And also, probably up-down motion is what you normally want to go with. Left-to-right motion is culturally specific, right? It's the biggest qualm I have with Windows 8. Is the left-to-right movement, right? It works in American culture, so it's probably fine. That's there it is. But scrolling you normally go from up to down. So, since this isn't much space, every view that you have needs to have a very, very clear function. So for example, let's take the Contacts app. All right, so when you're entering your contact information here, this is a modal view, right? So I'm entering my wife's information here, right? And at the very top left, this is the most information that you have, and as you scroll down, you get farther and farther away from the specific information that you'd want for a contact. For contact information, the absolute first thing you want is phone and then email, right? And maybe that's reversed in today's culture, I don't know. When I was growing up, it was phone first and then email. Yeah? You guys are coming with me on that? Okay. I don't know, maybe their Facebook account is up here too for your generation. I have no idea. I don't know what you kids do.
You don't really have them to the contact. You just have them on Facebook.
Oh, you just have them on Facebook. You just friend anybody. It's like, are we friends? I don't know. Let me check my account. All right. Use modal dialogues very, very sparingly. Okay? A modal input is anything that takes over the screen. Okay? So it prevents interaction with everything else that's on the screen. All right? It comes up, it pops up, it is there, and you have to deal with it. You use it when it is critical to capture the user's attention. All right, so an alert would be a modal view that you want to use very, very sparingly, right? This is an alert, say, hey, turn on location services to see apps that are popular near your location. And it gives two options, settings and cancel. All right, this is something you want to use only when you absolutely have to. Why are they using it here?
Because you cannot use it.
Unless you give them location.
Because the app will not work unless you give location, right? And it explains this is why we need location. So you can go to settings or you can cancel, and cancel is bolded.
I actually have disagreed with the way they're doing that in the new iOS. Like, they're giving you an option to go to settings, but normally you don't really want to leave the app just to go and do all of that, figure that out. So they should just give you like a button that says turn on.
Turn on location services here. I would agree.
They do the same thing for like Wi-Fi. It's like, turn on Wi-Fi, do something, and then you have to go to settings. But if you know, you can just swipe up the button and click Wi-Fi.
That's fair. That's fair.
They usually do that when the first time you use the app. This only comes up if you refuse for the first time. Like the first time they're like, do you want to turn
That is
location
true.
services on? And you say yes or no. And if you say no, the next time you try, it's like, hey, this app can't work because your service isn't on. So go to settings if you want to change that.
Yes. We'll talk about that in just a second too. The other time is when you use a modal view is when it's a self-contained action. Okay, so another type of modal view is the email client. When you hit new email down at the bottom and it pops up, it takes over the screen. And this is a completely contained action because you are about to write an email and send it and then it will be done, right? So it's a completely self-contained action. The same thing when I'm adding a contact. When I add a contact, that completely takes over the screen. I get to fill things in and then it goes away. And it's not necessarily part of my view hierarchy that I want someone to be able to navigate through. Does that make sense? It's a one-time thing, and then it's gone. Keep it simple. Try not to make it tied to navigation. That's what I just said. And provide a safe and easy exit from your modal view, right? So in this settings application, the bolded thing was cancel, right? If you are on an application and let's say you want to actually share part of your screen right here, right? Let's say you're actually like using AirDrop or some of these share screens down here. In the very, very top left, it is cancel. You can always exit out of what you're trying to share. Fair enough? We're not going to use modals very much. Or if we do, it's going to be a really good reason for why you have a modal view. Good. Okay. Yeah. You guys are coming with me on that. Keep your alerts very succinct. Change your wording. When you look at this, I want you to be like a newspaper editor. Look at the wording of everything that you have and take out the words that you don't need and avoid jargon. Right? So if I had an application or an alert to a user and this is what it looked like, error, our server timed out. Okay. That's not a very good alert. That's not a very good alert at all. In fact, I think that actually breaks most of the design constraints that we have. A better alert. Is this a better alert? Problem connecting, please try again later. Okay. Yes, it's better. Is it good? It's informative.
It's less informative than the other one because in the other one, it's the server.
Well, you know it's a server. What does it mean when I go grab a random person off of the street and say, hey, a server timed out?
They have no idea. But problem connecting, they would understand.
Problem connecting, they would understand. Our server timed out? Whose server? Why is it yours? Our server timed out. That's great. We should go to a different restaurant. Right? Or we're going to get a new server because they just clocked out. Right? They're going to take it to the word that they most understand is right next to that. Right? If you're designing applications for the masses, design for the masses, not for computer scientists. Okay? Maybe something like this. Problem connecting. There might be a problem with the server. Do you want to notify our staff about the issue? Send notification, go back.
They're just giving you responsibilities that you don't want.
You're using too many options.
It's given the user. There's two options here.
The masses.
So let's come up with some design principles for this. Use verbs for buttons. Okay? So this is okay. Send notification, go back. That's okay. That doesn't break anything. What's next? Make sure the title is meaningful, right? Error, warning, that's not a title. That tells me nothing about what you're telling me, all right? The fact that it just took over my screen, I get it, all right? It wants my attention, all right? When I give it a title, problem connecting is probably better, all right? Two choices and the safe choice bolded. Well, this one does that down here. It's okay if there's one choice. You're telling them, please try again later. This is okay to do, right? But if you're giving them more than one choice, bold the safe choice. Okay? I'm talking to you, Facebook. Full sentences used in the explanation, right? So anything down here, you want to be a full sentence, right? You can have sentence fragments in the title. That's fine. Try to only have a title, if you can, right? Because all of this text down here, it's distracting, right? It makes me just want to click OK and get through it. I don't want to read it, and I certainly don't want to have to scroll my alert. All right, and if there's too much text, it'll scroll through, and they'll be like, huh? Right, this, and they're liable to tap one of the buttons when they do that. Try not to say we, and try not to say our. Okay? So this one breaks that. Do you want to notify our staff about the issue? Did I break the design element there? This one certainly breaks it. Our server timed out. I don't know why it's your server. Whatever, it's fine. This down here, do you want to notify our staff about the issue? What's bad about that?
Yeah, because
You're telling your customer that we're the problem.
yeah.
Yes, you are telling you are taking the blame onto yourself, which is what you should do. Don't ever tell your user it's their fault. Ever, even if it is.
Just keep it neutral. Just say, do you want to notify staff or like the company?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's fair. That's fair. You could say the company or da-da-da, but using our in this situation, I think is probably an exception to the rule. It's okay because you're soliciting feedback. It's like, we'd love to know that you're having trouble. You know, go ahead and send us a notification. Unless it's going to send that notification to the server. What about this? Is this a good use? Turn on location services to allow maps to determine your location. I just want to click yes too.
Or
You don't want to go to
That's a really long title.
It's a pretty long title.
That bothers me, but it's not like terrible.
It's not terrible, right? It's something you can get through. They're probably going to read the whole thing, and they're probably going to take action in regards to it.
Can you not just click yes? Is that not?
You can, but only the first time. We'll talk about it here in a second.
Yeah. I've seen that before.
What if there's nothing they can do?
What do you mean?
If there's nothing they can do to change what the problem is.
You mean like problem connecting that thing?
What is that? Of It is. It is. This is what Google used to do, still does. I don't know if they still do this.
They do.
They still do it. Chrome. Aw, snap. Something went wrong with the displaying this web page. To continue, press reload or go to another page. I kind of like it too. It's kind of fun.
If you're not connected to the internet, they have a dinosaur.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
still miss Twitter.
So even when you're mad, you're happy. Because you're the dinosaur.
Anyway. Okay. Consider not having a splash screen. Okay? The splash screen is pretty much used to give the impression of quickness in your application.
What's slash thing?
That is a splash screen.
Shows up on the rest of your stuff.
It shows up while things are loading in your application. It's a splash screen. So Skype did this, right? It would blast up the Skype thing. No, don't do that. You can do that. It's a good marketing technique, but it gives the impression that your app is slow, right? So what you can do instead is have a picture of the very first interface that pops up on your application as a splash screen. And now when the user hits your app, they hit that app and it pops up immediately, that picture. You can't interact with it, but it gives the impression like your app is loaded, it's ready to go.
But then when you try to interact with it,
But then when you try to interact with it, well, guess what? Guess what? People, when they launch your app, they look for it. They're trying to decide what they want to do. You've got like 2 seconds before they even try to interact with your application.
what if this is an app that you use regularly? If you don't
I am not kidding. There are good studies on this.
That's
Yes.
If you're like, if you're
A lot-
techie person, you instantly know where to.
Yeah, I know. A lot of times what will happen too is the incorrect splash screen. Like it'll actually go to a part of the app where like you've navigated somewhere, it remembers where you are. The splash screen loads up, which is a totally different interface, and then it fades away into a different interface, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, that's true.
So you've still got to use it sparingly. You got to use it properly. What's that?
Like the Facebook app does that.
Weather does that too. When it's trying to reload the weather, it'll just like wherever you last saw it, it'll have a nice splash screen of the weather thing, and then it fades in. So it's up to you. That's why I say consider not having a splash screen, because it's not all bad. Okay. What does Apple say we should do? Formatting. The difference between these two interfaces is one fits on the screen and one requires that the user scroll around. Okay? That's pretty simple, pretty easy to do. It's also an easy mistake to make, right? You've got a lot of content, you want to fit it on the screen, you're like, I'm just going to put it in scroll view and call it good. All right, that's the easy design decision. The other one is to actually make it scrollable and so that you can go down and through it. Design for touch, right? People know taps, they know swipes, and they want to use them on a touch interface, right? So the calendar on the left here, it's pretty good. On the right, not so much. It's hard to interact with. It's made for clicking and mouse overs that you don't get on a touch interface, right? Design for taps. What do I mean by that? Finger taps. People don't have styluses on the iPhone. Well, they might, but you don't design for that. So everything should have a large target size.
what is 44 points? Is that like
44 points is what Apple recommends. Nothing smaller than 44 points. 44 by 44.
that's like the average finger size as determined by Apple?
There are people that devote their entire research to figuring out what the optimal tap size should be, the smallest you can go, and still target well. Legible text. That means large font sizes. Okay? That's pretty easy. High contrast. This is not always easy to do, but most of the time it is as long as you follow the color palette. Negative space. What do I mean by negative space? In reference to text.
Separate content.
This has a higher cognitive load than this to read. It's the same content. This is much easier to read. That's what I mean. Pretty easy. Yeah? Designed for the Retina display. All right? Assume the user has a Retina display and everything is going to be in super high resolution. Right? Rather than can you even see that on the projector? The projector is not a Retina display. So I should have designed for such. I did not. Anyway, this is very pixelated.
Lower quality.
It's just lower quality. Organize.
Oh, that's terrible.
Is
Is that? Wow.
Aren't those all modals?
What, this over here?
The one on the left.
This is a table view. Right. So this is navigation, right? So all of these would, assumingly, I assume they wouldn't be a modal input, that they would actually slide over the screen, and then you could go back, right? Down here at the bottom, metric and English, they have one segmented control at the very, very bottom. This one has two segmented controls at the very, very bottom. Why did they switch to only one? Voila. And it's also, unless all of these are related, you probably want to limit it to one segmented control, right? Because usually when you select that, it changes something about the content in the interface, right? And so having more than one, a little dicey, a little higher cognitive load, just use one. Alignment. This one's a little more interesting, right? You have up here a very nice top left aligned image in the very most important part, some text about it, and at the very bottom, one giant continue button, right? For when you get done with reading all of this, then you continue. Or there's this. It's a big continue button. People can figure it out. It's not in the right place.
Why would you put content after a continue button?
These are, by the way, these are examples that Apple has put together from real applications that people submitted to the App Store.
So like they took like the one.
No. They did not take the actual thing that was submitted. What they did is they reconstructed it, and they're like, "This is what I saw. Please fix this." Okay, so it's their version of the mistake that they saw.
But people really.
But people have really done things like this.
Like the table view.
That's right.
Yeah, that was someone actually submitted.
Okay, so when you're planning your application, the one thing you need to do is get feedback early, okay, on your application, on the workflow and the design of your application. The best way to get feedback from someone is to use a paper prototype. What do I mean by a paper prototype? You draw everything on the user interface, right? And the phases as people go through the user interfaces. Why is paper such a good idea? It's easy, it's cheap. I haven't heard the reason yet. It's quick, you can erase it. If you look at it on a computer, people expect it to do stuff.
But actually, sometimes, well, I use like a software called Balsamic that you can do those in the computer, and then like the people expect that it's gonna work, but it does work. Right? You can just link the images together.
You can link things
Get,
together.
like, the actual
These are all good things. These are all well thought out. Not the reason I'm looking for. More expensive to change later, yes. The type of feedback that you get is actually the reason. When you give someone a paper prototype, they ignore font, they ignore images, and they give you feedback about the structure of your application and the way that it flows. When you give them something else, they're like, I probably would have used Helvetica right here. You get these ridiculous types of feedback that don't help you structure the application. A paper prototype will give you those. This is a cool app that I found. I think it was released last week. Maybe it's been around for a while. But it allows you to take a picture of your paper prototype, put some squares around things, and actually make it interactable. So you can go through it. It's pretty neat. It's a free app. And you can take pictures and sync it to your Dropbox account, and then go into Dropbox and select, how you're going to go through stuff. But you can actually get this paper prototype and really navigate through it. And it doesn't have to be paper. I mean, it could, like, as your design gets more complicated and you want to go through your design, you can actually have pictures of what that interface might look like just from the storyboard and make it interactable by just kind of dragging over things and saying it's going to go here and there. And you just see how people respond to it, just like you were saying. Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
Unrelated, but you said font, so it made me think about it.
Yep.
What is the best font?
What is the best font to use? That is such a loaded question.
It is.
I'm not going to be able to answer that. The default font and typography, you know what? We'll talk about it here in a second. Because typography in flat design is absolutely essential and needs to be very, very well thought out. Okay, so what is flat design? Anybody? You've seen flat design. You've read about flat design, maybe. Somebody tell me what flat design is. Content over Chrome, not Chrome the web browser, but like.
But I mean, I don't know a good description, but I know things like you don't have shadows or you don't have anything that looks 3D.
Yes.
Like it's on a sheet of paper.
Yes, it is. It's elements of design, right? That when you're making a user interface, that are there's no three-dimensional quality to them at all. They're very vibrant colors. There's no gradients. There's no drop shadow. There might be a little bit of drop shadow, but usually there's not. Very, very subtle drop shadow. And the opposite of flat design, not really, but what has come to be, if you get on the internet, they'll tell you this, is skeuomorphism. Skeuomorphism is metaphor, right? So when you get on your computer, right? Let's say you get on your computer. It's 1995. I don't know how old you guys are. Let's say it's 2001, all right? You open up your computer, you launch it. What's the first thing you see? Folders, desktop, the floating Windows desktops. All of those are skeuomorphic designs because they're metaphors for things that are in the real world, right? When you used to click on something, if you wanted to go into a directory, it was like a little file manager, right? The file manager was like a real thing. You would open the drawer and you'd look through files. What is that called? A cabinet, file cabinet. Jeez.
I mean, it's like folders nowadays. Like
Folders are skeuomorphic design.
Yeah, it's a folder.
Yes, it's a metaphor for where you put content at. The desktop is your desktop. It was meant to have that kind of metaphor connotation. Flat design takes that and says, hey, we don't need that anymore. People know how to use user interfaces. Let's just take the metaphor part out of it and do something that is very clear and hides all of the things where we try to kind of trick the user into seeing something that they're used to, right? Like a calendar app. I look at the calendar app on my phone. I don't even have a flip calendar. I mean, come on, right? But the old iOS calendar app was built around that metaphor of flipping through a calendar.
Isn't that what Johnny Ives was saying for iOS 7, that he was removing every single skeuomorphic thing?
Yes.
Like for notes, there's like a little thing that looked like a note that you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If the old Game Center was the velvet, the green velvet.
Yeah.
Not like you go to a casino and it's the green velvet gaming center kind of thing. That was skeuomorphic design. People hated it. They did. A lot of people hated it. This, bam, one of the original phones. I had this phone. Oh yeah.
It had a start button.
It had a smart button. It had a start button on my phone. I had a desktop on my phone. Right? This was one of those things. This was our first shot. We took what we knew about computers and we were like, all right, let's make mobile computers. Bam! We'll like everything that we know and we will slap it onto a mobile device. Do you want to know what the original kind of concepts for the iPad looked like in 2004? Not made by Apple, but made by people that were like looking, hey, this is what the iPad might look like.
Exactly.
Had a trackpad on it. It was a computer that you just carried around. Taking all of the metaphors that we know, but when we get to a mobile, all of those metaphors, they break down. People don't need them anymore. People don't even need them anymore for laptops and desktops. That's where flat design comes in. Flat design says there is no need for a visual metaphor in the elements that you put there. We're going to make them minimal, we're going to make them efficient, and color is going to be king. Color is what guides you through the interface, not the design and the way that it looks. Okay? So these are some examples down here of some flat design elements. And the entirety of iOS 7 is flat design. So the main principles of flat design, they started in advertising. This was called the Swiss style or the minimalist style. Back when they were doing so Swiss Air, this is one of the classic examples. It's very, very minimal typography against one kind of overarching thing that you can see in the advertisement. These are minimalist designs of book covers. And these. Right? You'll notice on here there's one or two very vibrant colors that are used. And there's no gradient along those colors. All right? So the difference between iOS and iOS 6 and 7 is right here. These, you can see where the lighting is supposed to be coming from here, right? There's lighting above that's shining down on all of the applications, and you can see that there's reflectances, right? These are supposed to be real three-dimensional buttons where the apps are. The flat design took all of that away, and it says, no, this is the design. It's completely flat. It's there, right? We're going to take all of that visual adornment that we think is cluttering the UI and making it harder to read and just throw it away. Whether or not you think that's a good idea is completely subjective. So, minimal typography. For your answer, what is the font of choice? It's what I use in my slides, Helvetica Neue. Right? But if you change your typography, that's completely up to you, and it changes the look and feel of your design, right? When you use the ligatures and you put things closer together, you might make it hard to read, but you also might make it more visually appealing. You might make it to where all of the wording that you have kind of squeezes in a little bit, and you make a better use of negative space. Okay? It's completely a design choice. Text size denotes the importance of something that you're looking at. Because when you're doing this minimalist design, you only have access to a couple of things. Size is one of them. Color's the other. Colors are very vibrant. They look good whether they're against a light background or a dark background. What do I mean by that? This color palette is the color palette of iOS 7. And each of these, if you use them as text, they will look good on white. They will look good on black. And that's why they were chosen. There's no drop shadow. There's no gradient. Depth is for orienting only, never the UI elements. What do I mean by that? Depth is for navigation. Depth is not for each element of the UI. A button does not need to be 3 dimensions in the pure flat design. Okay, that's flat design. Everybody knows what it is? Now let's bash it. All right. Oh, wait, that's my website. I use flat design in my website. You can go look at it. We're going to skip over it because we're running out of time. Okay, pure flat design. That can be the enemy of HCI. So this is the new iOS 7 keyboard down at the bottom. Please someone tell me which of these keyboards the shift button is on.
I hate that. So annoying.
They've taken flat design and they used it just because they can use it. This would be much better to have something that actually told me the shift button was pressed, right? Something where you can actually look at some 3 dimensions, right, and use that to great effect.
Do you have the old one?
Do I have the...
Second old one?
I do.
Fine. Like,
Well,
see it when
the...
you press.
So, yeah, I mean, here, this would be a great example. Use a gradient to kind of show that it has been selected, right? You show that kind of a light is flipped on and switched on. Can you guys see that down here?
Or have the keyboard display all lowercase.
Ah, or lowercase. Now, there is a problem with that. When you shift things to lowercase, they become a little bit harder to read on the keyboard. That's why they don't do it. There's actually some pretty good reasons that you can argue with. You can have good arguments against keeping everything capitalized versus not capitalized. But it kind of gives cohesiveness and cohesion to the keyboard. You always know where to press without having to internalize capitalized and non-capitalized characters.
What about making the up arrow down arrow?
Up versus down arrow. That's good, but if you weren't familiar with the way that it looked before, maybe.
So I can just like highlight it, like something around the button.
Yeah, I mean, like you could make it look like the button is depressed. Like you could actually give some 3 dimensions to it. Like maybe you have it a flat design, but when it's depressed, it actually goes into the interface, and you can see some of that to where it looks like the button has been pressed into it. Maybe. Post-flat design is probably something that we'll see a lot more of. This is an example of post-flat design where you take the clarity, the deference that you have, but you still apply gradients. You still apply 3 dimensions to it. It'd be nice to see. Google. Google is post-flat design, in my opinion. I think they're doing some really kind of cool stuff. What do I mean by that? Well, let's see. When you look at the buttons that are over here, it's a flat design. It is. It's completely flat. It's very clear, very kind of well-used negative space. However, there's still 3-dimensionality to some of these, right? Gmail still has drop shadows that they use across it. They're conveying roundness from gradients. All right? They use flat design, but sparingly. I think there's a lot to take away from Google. And anyway, Google was the first one to use flat design anyway in Gmail. They switched over their Gmail to be flat. Then iOS 7 came out and it became popular. And you would argue Windows 8 used it as well. Maybe before anybody. Windows Phone 7 used it as well. Defining your style. Okay. Know your application. Okay? The style basics. Design is flat in iOS 7. These are just the very, very basics of style. Color exposes purpose. Use negative space. There's subtle bordering when needed. But usually there's not any bordering. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take an example of the contacts application. Okay, so when I click on Add New Contact, I click up here. There's text that's filled minimally. It's descriptive, but it's grayed out, so you know where I still need to click. Color conveys that interaction is possible, right? There's not a border except when it might be ambiguous, right? So that add photo, they gave it importance. They wanted to show that you could add a photo, and they wanted to highlight that feature. So it has a border around it, whereas other interaction elements don't. All right? So that's a basic of Know Your App. Productivity applications. They enable detailed manipulation, things that you can do for organizing, adding and subtracting from lists, and drilling down into those lists for detail. So the application, the calendar app, this is a good one. When you click on, the depth at which you're going conveys hierarchy, and everything's animated into that. Right? So that transition motion as you go into the day orients the user where they are. When you go back out, the manipulation tabs at the very top completely change structure at the very top. So there's things that you can do when you drill down into the detail that pop up seamlessly as you transition into that view. Right? Another style of app is the utility application. A utility application has a very, very simple task, and it usually doesn't have much input to it. Right? It's highly visual. It's something you can play around with and have fun with. And it has an enhanced display of information. And usually there's no hierarchy. It's a very flat, not just flat design, but a flat interface design. Right? There's not a hierarchy where you're drilling down into something. You're displaying content and you maybe slide it across, which is like the weather application. And it's glanceable. What do I mean by that?
You don't need much time to process it.
Exactly. When I want the weather, it's usually, bam, I'm trying to get it. I don't really care about the fluff. Okay, it's 63 degrees. This is the shirt I'm going to wear. Right? So, but you can still have a lot of fun with it, right? There's rain going in the background. The entire screen is used, edge to edge. There's almost no navigation that you can see except for the very, very bottom where you can see the page control down at the bottom. But the navigation is flat, right? So I can kind of slide back and forth across it and go over here. Input is actually exploratory. This is a utility application, so all the design elements don't have to be all that obvious. You can click at the very top and display humidity, wind, all that kind of thing, but that's hidden, and it's something that you don't have to build and to be obvious into the design. Because the one thing that you want to get out of this this application, the weather app, is the current temperature and the temperature today. And as long as those are displayed and it's easy to see, everything else can be kind of a fun interaction style. Yeah? There's an immersive application. And a good example of this is the Compass app. Right? So it's a high interaction visual experience. Right? When you're going through the Compass application, you're very, very much manipulating the device. All of the user interface elements are hidden. I mean, there's almost no interface elements on this at all, anyway. Right? Except for the page control down at the bottom, just to let them know that they can kind of slide across and switch over how you're looking at the compass. There's non-standard controls, right? So the way that you separate those two white spheres is that you're manipulating the phone this way and that. And then you can shift it around this way to get the angle out. And the information is centered here. It's centered on the experience. It's a compass application. It's something you might use while you're hiking. Okay, so navigation is orientation. The user has to know where they are in your application at all times. The easiest way to do that, and what you should do, is use a navigation bar. It's the most understandable form of hierarchy for people. People can see a navigation bar and know what it does. A tab bar. This is for when you have parallel content, and each peer is different in function, right? So you have the tab bar down here for iTunes, let's say, right? Okay? All of these things are different things that you can click. Now, I could have made these a page control, right? I could have paged between, you know, the radio or Genius or playlists or songs and those things. But they did it as a tab bar. Why?
So you can see what you're going to and go faster.
Yeah, you can click through, and every single view that you load, it looks different, it has different content, it's different interaction with it, right? Whereas the page view control, it's for when you're displaying identical views but with different content, right? So weather in London looks the same as weather in Dallas, except it just has different content there, right? So that's why it's better suited for a page view. And the table view is for master detail. Things like contacts, when you want to drill down into each. Another thing is only have one way of navigating to a certain view. That helps users orient themselves on where they are in the application when there's only one way to get to one thing. Button design. Embrace the borderless until you need a button, or until you need a border. So, this right here. As you can see inside, when you go into the App Store, they have borders around the buttons on the side. And that's to distinguish when you're tapping on the row versus tapping the button. Or, when the most important interaction that you have on the screen, you want to highlight it. You want to highlight that interaction, absolutely. So this, when you open up, let's say, the timer application, the start and pause buttons are what you want to draw absolute attention to. That is the main function of this application, and you want to draw absolute attention to it and give a lot of negative space around it. Stay consistent, use design elements that don't distract. We've kind of gone through a lot of these. Visual feedback, visible feedback and direct manipulation. What do I mean by direct manipulation? You guys brought this up earlier, so maybe we can skip over a bit, but yeah.
Is it that when you like write something, moves in the direction you drag it?
Yes, right. So when you're swiping across something, it starts to like, you don't swipe and then it goes and moves. As you move across it, you are directly manipulating. You can see it being swiped off the screen, right? So that is a form of feedback that makes that interaction much, much more intuitive, right? Even though we've gotten rid of metaphors for, say, like the visual elements, they're still very much alive for promoting intuitive interaction elements. So things like flicking, tapping, pinch to zoom, those are all things that aren't going away. So use them. And finally, give the user control. The user always have to have control of their information when they're using your application. And what do I mean by that? User control. Don't ask until you need access to something of a user's information. Okay? And make sure that the user knows the trade-off for giving you that information. The easiest way to do this? What's some ways of doing this? Let's say you've got an application, you need access to the contacts.
You explain what you're going to use the context for.
You explain what you're going to use the contacts for, right?
Well, if you ask right before you're about to use it, shouldn't they know what you're going to use it for?
Ah, they're going to be much more in tune with why you need access to their contacts, right? If you ask right before you need it. So if you use this process of benefit explanation, you can ask twice, showing the benefit in your own words, right? So a lot of times when you want access to someone's contacts, you can hit autofill, and Apple immediately, once you try to go get the contacts, they immediately pop up and they say, this app wants access to your contacts. There's no way for you to get around that modal view that pops up. It's always going to be there. This app wants access to your contacts until they give access, right? So what you can do is something like this, is asked twice. The first time, you know you're about to ask for access the very, very first time. You display something like let cluster access photos, and then you tell them exactly what the benefit and the explanation is for why you want them to be able to use their photos. And then if they say not now, you don't do anything. If they say give access, then you go ahead and try and do it, and then Apple will pop up its dialog, which is going to be less information than you could give from the first. Or something like this, right? You're about to add people, right? Maybe you've got some social media sharing that you're doing. You start typing in someone. This is no results found for Brendan. You're like, show results from iPhone contacts. The second that you click that, then it goes to this. Cluster would like to access your contacts. And it may ask twice. But that's okay, because it gives you the opportunity to ask and show them what you're using. Okay, so let's see if we're all on the same page. This is an application. When you launch it, it goes through a series of these things, right? Where it says, like, get the big picture, automatic collages, group your photos by time and location, blah, blah, blah. So it kind of goes through here all of the different things that you can do. And then it says, Heyday would like access to your photos. Okay, don't allow. What's good about this?
They explain what they're going to use it for before you make the decision.
What's bad about it?
It's a lot of screens to go through.
It's a lot of screens to go through at the very, very start of your application. Yeah, you're explaining it well to the user, but this can get really annoying as a user when you're trying to go through. And I really don't want to decide right then. I want to get into the application. I want to find out if I'm going to delete this app from my phone or not. The first thing. And then if I like it, then maybe I want to give access to my photos.
For sides of the buttons, which one is better to have, like the save option on the left or right?
On the right.
Right.
Safe option on the right and bolded.
So not.
No, that's right. Oh, it's not. No, not what they're doing. That's another thing that's bad here. Don't allow should be bolded and on the right.
Well, it depends on what you consider safe.
It does. User-centric design would say don't allow should be on the right. All right? Company-oriented design would be this. You have to decide what's better for you. And if you're writing an app for a client, they need to tell you which one you're going to use. But you should steer them towards user-centric design because the user will appreciate it more. Yeah?
What if something negative is not like a good thing to have? Like, don't allow. Like, you can have something like maybe later or add later or something like that.
Add later. Yeah, I think that would be better as well.
Otherwise, you feel like you're like, I don't know, doing something like
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Some great examples of modern UI. The flight status app. I love this application, right? There's a lot of back button applications up here where they have, you can actually, you're going back to look at some airplane flights. They don't actually show text right there. They get a lot more across with the image in this top left corner. You know that if you click here, you're going to be able to go down and maybe drill down into like pricing. So you can order different tickets. It's a nice flat design. Plenty of imagery. This is a good one. We're running short on time, so I'm going to keep going. a good example. You guys ever heard of Tasky? It's an application that allows you to put tasks together. Pick up friends. I'm going to add it to this list. Here's a time frame on it. Okay, I'm done. Oh, I'm going to swipe over to the right and expose this moving interface on the right. I'm going to click and drag, just something that everybody kind of knows how to do. The biggest task is always going to be on the top because it assumes that that's what you need to get done. There's some issues with this app, but it's a good example. You know what a great example is? One of the best iPhone designed apps that was ever made. It's my favorite. A really excellent example is Google Maps. A very, very excellent example. They got the pinch and zoom aspect. It's a flat design down here at the bottom. When I search, everything disappears except that search bar. If I'm searching for food, it lets me know that it's searching. Has some content up in the top right corner. It gives me a very good visual display. You'll notice that the elements on the map, this is not flat design, but it makes it entirely more readable to see those plates with a fork and a knife. I can scroll through down at the very, very bottom and figure out where something is, right? So I can go through the different options that I have, and then I can drag it up. I can look at more information. Nice, clean, negative space. I can drill down into the application. I can hit the back button and keep scrolling down and get lots of access to different things. And then I can scroll down even more, and I can move this. It is complete direct manipulation. Yeah?
The voice control of Siri on it is a lot better.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
it's really fast.
Google's voice is way better than Siri. At least with also they've almost taken that point of direct manipulation and put it in that voice application, because the second that they have an idea about what you're saying, they immediately display it on the screen and it fades in. It's ephemeral, right? It fades in as it gets surer and surer about the confidence of the words. And it changes. And it gives you that feedback. Okay, that's everything I have of mobile HCI design. Wow, I took it all the way up to the entire next lecture. So for there's no class next week. Work on final projects. I will be around. I should be around Wednesday of next week, but we won't have lecture. The Monday after that, I'm going to give the lecture that I'm going to have is on pitching and presenting. We'll talk about pitching and presenting. However, we still have one more bonus topic for Wednesday, and I want you guys to choose what it's going to be. Your options are, we talk about linear prediction, speech processing, guitar effects, iBeacons, music library access. What?
Music library access.
Speech processing.
Well, what?
People just not to do it, but now it's an option.
Well, I mean, if you were doing a guitar effect.
What are IBs?
iBeacons? It's like Bluetooth location aware. Essentially, a lot of ads and things. They used them at the Super Bowl. They haven't exactly caught on a whole lot yet, but they're getting more mainstream.
It's like when you go to like somewhere and then the password pops up your something. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Speech processing is
Okay, let's do this. Who wants iBeacons?
Can we vote on like our two votes? Everyone gets two votes.
Yeah, you can get 2 votes. You could get 2 votes. We'll take it. All right, who wants iBeacons? It's essentially using Bluetooth for location. You can get three different levels of location. Speech processing. Oh, Dead Reckoning? Nah. No, I'm not going to be able to do it. I don't think I can put that together in a day. Guitar effects. No one gives a shit. Like, linear prediction. Yeah, it's my second vote. Okay, it looks like speech processing is going to be the one.
You haven't even asked about music.
Oh, music library access. Okay. Everyone's like, I don't know. it's really easy to do anyway. I don't know that I could make a full lecture out of it, but we'll see. Okay, speech processing. I will see you guys next time.
What are you doing this evening? What are you doing today?
General question.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible to like